FIFA are now charging for fan fests. Major League Soccer may be adopting a divisional format. And we take a deeper dive into the NWSL Trinity Rodman saga as that continues. That and much more on Friday's edition of Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. You found your way to Morning Kickaround, where we dot the map of the American soccer landscape. From the frozen north, my name's Robert Kerr, local soccer guy, and from his escape to the tropics, radio soccer guy, Jason Davis. How you feeling?
I'm good. It is nice and toasty here in Puerto Rico. I'm enjoying myself, eating too much food, but ready to talk soccer with you, Rob.
Great to see a lot of MK Ultras in the chat already. Jeff, how's it going? Good morning. He's repping Lionsbridge this morning. And then hello to Raleigh. Good morning, sir. And you got your co-worker, your co-founder of your club, hooked on Morning Kickaround. Watched his first show yesterday. So good morning to you. Not an MK Ultra yet. Matt, what is holding you back? It's not too much of a hurdle to get on board with the MK Ultras. Join the movement. Dot the map here with us. And then good morning to Michael, one of our MK Ultras as well. Great show on the way. Plenty to go through. It is a free-for-all Friday. We do have a guest at the top of the show before we get into those topics. So should we just jump right into today's hot topic?
I believe our guest is waiting, so let's do it. Let's dive in.
The ongoing saga between Trinity Rodman and the NWSL took another turn last night with the rejection of the HIP player mechanism. And to catch us up, we got Claire Watkins in the house, host of the Late Sub for Just Women's Sports. Good morning, Claire.
Morning, all. How's it going?
Hi, Claire. Are you tired of talking about this yet? Is it getting old yet?
Oh man, we're in the off season and everyone's fighting. What are we doing here?
Yeah. That's exactly what this feels like.
Yeah.
I also caught, just to bring things together, caught your post on Blue Sky, and I think Jason Anderson was also involved in the conversation about how, this isn't just limited to the NWSL. The WNBA is going through their own conflict between labor and management. But obviously we're here for soccer. We're here to talk about this. This is all unfolding, if not because of Trinity Rodman. She certainly was the spark for the conversation. Can you give us a timeline? Because I think it's important to recognize that maybe what the NWSL is trying to do with this high-impact player rule is kind of independent of when the Trinity Rodman stuff kind of dropped. Is that right?
I think yes and no. I think timelines I think this has been in conversation for a while. I think it's not obviously a surprise that the Trinity Rodman thing is a big topic this offseason. It's not like it was a surprise to the league. Everyone knew this was coming. I do wonder if the ratification of this through the Board of Governors did get pushed up just because they were having these conversations. There was a different contract offer for Trinity Rodman that the league didn't like. We've seen the back and forth with that. I do think that this is something that they have been doing in the works, but I actually think one of the frustrations from the Players Association was feeling like this got rushed for unnecessary reasons because everyone should have kind of known this was coming anyway.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so last night, the Players Union rejected this high-impact player mechanism. Kind of walk us through why they did that.
Sure. So basically what the NWSL Board of Governors, as I understand it, came up with is a cap exemption as opposed to altering the cap itself, meaning that they want to give certain players the opportunity to get paid more outside of the cap space up to $1 million. The reason why the Players Association doesn't like that, and I personally think this is fair, is this concept of the high impact player. It has not been publicly reported yet what the conditions are to become a high impact player. But I think the Players Association is very concerned of haves and have nots with sort of arbitrary things. I think some of the things talked about were even like commercial impact of a player or how many personal awards they've won, which we know can be very wonky in the world of women's soccer. And so the league is trying to kind of have it both ways. And the Players Association is basically saying, league, or the league shouldn't have to make these decisions on clubs' behalf. The league should not be able to dictate what a good player is. The clubs should be able to do that. So why not just raise the cap by $1 million and let clubs do their jobs, basically?
I mean, in general, this is a history of MLS too, with the way that they break down designations for players. The players' associations generally don't like this because it means certain players they can't access these funds. You are saying not everybody can be part of the giant pool, or whatever pool, not giant, but obviously the pool of money available. I mean, that's what the players' union's major beef is.
Exactly. And I think again, sort of with some of the comments that PA Executive Director Megan Burke made in some publications yesterday, there is still just frustration with the timeline. And you mentioned the WNBA at the top of the show. And I think a clear distinction that's important, and I think this is what the PA is saying as well, is the WNBA is fighting about this because they are out of contract, whereas the NWSL is within their CBA contract period. Changing the rules, renegotiating salary, doing it this quickly to ostensibly try to kind of last minute convince a player to stay kind of goes against the spirit of what a CBA is. And I think the Players Association has a problem with that part as well.
Yeah, some of the reporting seemed dangerous. Like you said, the outside influences of who qualifies for this seems like maybe in the short term, they're trying to rush it to try to keep their star player, but that seems like it's bringing in a very dangerous outside influence of who could possibly qualify for a decent sized paycheck.
Did I catch that they were talking to like a third party to try to do the decision making around this, what a high impact player actually looks like? I mean, that seems rife for problematic application.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I think Burke called it kind of half baked. Again, I think this is not, I mean, the league has a history of this as well, where they see problems coming down the road. They don't see a solution to it. They themselves, in trying to kind of make things seem as, up to date or as, above board as possible, they try to consult people, then they bring it to the PA. The PA is now giving their concerns. I think this process has become very muddy. And I think that's why, certainly on the players' side, they're very concerned about codifying something where they don't know exactly where it's coming from and why it's coming now.
And it seems like this is just going to add complication to how the league is put together. And I understand that like the equivalent in the NWSL of the GAM sort of thing is kind of aging out. Right. And so they were trying to get to just a kind of a straightforward structure for putting this together. And part of the rebuke is, why don't you just raise the salary cap and the teams can do what they will?
Claire, why not just raise the salary cap? I put the statement from the league on the screen so people can read it. And I think what this kind of, if you read it critically, you can see, well, you're saying that this is going to increase compensation across the board, but what you're just saying is that you're not actually increasing compensation for anybody else. You're just, again, separating a pool of money specifically for one player.
Yeah, I will be honest and say that I think the PA is pushing the right button, which is like, I don't functionally see the difference between just raising the salary cap. And I think, again, this was a point that Burke made, which is actually that the restriction of the cap was something that came up during CBA negotiations. And they said kind of at the 11th hour when they were getting this deal done, basically the way they were able to get the CBA kind of finished is that the league came back to the Players Association and said, these are the caps as we propose them. They are base salary caps, but we can always change them. We have the discretion to change the cap. It doesn't have to be these minimums that we've set out in the CBA. And then now they're reluctant to do so. And I ultimately, I mean, it's sort of reading between the lines, but I just think that then throughout the history of the NWSL, and I think MLS has a little bit of this too, I think it's just the league wanting to control things that there is questionable about whether or not they actually have like the right to control what people come in and for what money. And I think always you wonder if that impetus comes from the owners who don't want to spend money as opposed to the ones who do.
Right. That seems to be one of the elements at play, is that there definitely is a more ambitious group of owners and a less ambitious group of owners, or less willing to spend. The other thing that is obviously part and parcel to this conversation is the place of NWSL in the world of women's soccer and maintaining that. And I wrote in my newsletter last week that to me is like the biggest question here is NWSL kind of going to relinquish this idea that they can be an elite league as Europe comes up. And I don't want to get into a conversation of what league is better or what teams are better right now. I don't think that's really what this is about. But it definitely seems like the NWSL has to make a decision and decide which lane they want to be in, Claire.
Yeah, I agree. I think the really tricky position that the NWSL puts it in, and I say this as someone who genuinely believes, like I do believe that the NWSL is the most competitive league in the world. I do think that some of these mechanisms have made that true or helped made that true over the last couple of years. But I think where they're missing the plot is that I don't think the way to make your league the most competitive, best league in the world is to artificially suppress the top. That seems like kind of a ridiculous measure. You should be trying to raise the bottom standards and be the best team, best league in the world, because this is a place where women's soccer players know they can get health insurance and a good salary, and they can come here, and it's sort of those rank and file players that make the league what it is. But if you're so worried about, again, artificially kind of capping spending at the top level of the league because you're afraid that one team is going to dominate, we've seen periods of domination in the NWSL with all of these rules. It's doable. Good soccer is good soccer. And so I think where the NWSL is losing the forest for the trees is they have mechanisms to still be that best competitive league in the world, but it's because minimum standards should be what they're touting as opposed to a ceiling at the top of the table.
Yeah, that's a very good point there. And it seems like that the players union is doing what the players union is intended for, which isn't always the case in various sports and leagues. Would you say that this is consistent, that they've been strong and very good on this topic and others recently?
I do. I think that, the NWSL obviously only ratified its first CBA in 2021. And I think that there were a lot of problems to that by not having a contract before. But I also think the players came in with a lot of strength, where there were a lot of learnings from what past leagues have done. There was a lot of learnings from what has happened in women's soccer in the past. And I think no matter what, you do see kind of a unified front on the players' side, where I have been very impressed, I guess, specifically with this issue, which can divide a union because it's about money, right? Salaries, everyone, wants the same thing, but not everyone is getting the same amount of money. I think the union messaging has been very good, where they're like, this is not about because we want Trinity Rodman to make $5 million a year. That's not what this is about. This is about the league messing with the process of players getting paid. And once they set that precedent, they can do it to anybody. And so I think the PA is kind of fighting two battles here. One is actually getting players paid, and one is basically telling the league as a single entity, there is still limits to what you are allowed to control in terms of club governance.
I mean, they've already had to deal with that head on, this single entity issue, and the judge actually saying, no, hold on, for all intents and purposes, you are independent businesses. I think this was around Olivia Moultrie. Is
exactly.
That right?
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, the one time this went to a third-party arbitrator, the league did not win, with the argument that they kind of can unilaterally make these decisions as a single entity.
If this HIP player mechanism went through, would you say would it have an adverse effect on the rosters, like how when the national teamers were the only ones really making significant money, and then the rest of the just league players were on a low? Would it have that sort of impact, you think?
I'm still pretty bullish on NWSL minimums, not because I think they're necessarily where they should be, but I do think actually globally they're fairly competitive. I think in Europe, we do still see the haves and the have-nots in that way, which is why they struggle for competitive league play, where you get the top stars getting paid a lot of money. You get whole teams at the bottom of the table who are not getting paid a lot of money. I think what they're worried about is basically capping what general managers can try to go scout, what they can try to go get. And I think ultimately what the PA is also arguing is that a top European player who has grown up in a European structure and understands like the European uncapped system is not going to be swayed by like a high impact player. You are, this special thing, you're coming in. And it's that part I think is uniquely bad for competition, because it doesn't allow teams to get creative with the way they want to put a team together under the cap. So I think it's like this kind of multi thing, while still, again, I'm still pretty happy with where minimums are in the NWSL.
I also want to say, I mean, I don't want to pull Jessica Berman's her job satisfaction on the part of the fans into this conversation, but I do think that it's necessary to say the NWSL has to be creative, and it does have to do things differently. And I'm going to bring in a comment here from our ultra Chris. He says Euro leagues are quickly becoming better because of the money, the branding the clubs have there, taking the branding the clubs created off of men's squads and building up the women's. That is just an impossible thing for the NWSL to have to wrestle with. I mean,
absolutely,
there's no men's clubs to eat off of in this country, and you wouldn't want to anyway. I think it's okay to be independent and have your own brands, and I think that is a strength of the NWSL. But when we talk about the sort of the nitrous that has hit women's football in Europe, a lot of that is based on the fact that it's Barcelona and Arsenal and Chelsea.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think the NWSL again, not to defend, like you said, not to kind of back up Berman too much, because I think the NWSL is making a lot of mistakes. But I think there is an element of, if a player wants to go to Europe, and this is why it's frustrating, because I don't think this is actually the situation Trinity Rodman is in. I think she wants to stay. But if you have a player who wants to go play in Champions League, or wants to go play for Arsenal or the team that they grew up watching, or anything like that, like, I think you're always going to have to fight that push-pull, which almost makes the salary issue more of a relevant topic, because if you're fighting the history, you're fighting the soccer culture, you're fighting the fact that you're going to get to go play in, at the Emirates, or get to go play at Stamford Bridge, and people want to go do that, and that feels really like a huge step in their career. You can't add the money element to it too and be like, and I'm going to absolutely make more money guaranteed if I go over there.
Yeah, that's an interesting position to be in. A little bit of a change of subject here, but with you being in Chicago based, what are the chances they add the red back to Red Stars?
Oh my God, I wish. I still call them the Red Stars. I get it wrong so often. I don't even mean to, but I would love to get a little bit of red back in there. Chicago Stars, it's too short. Every time someone says stars, I'm like, but what kind? What kind of star? A red star, right? Yeah.
What was the actual reasoning behind that? I never quite understood any of the explanations.
Their marketing argument was that they wanted the Chicago to be a bigger part of it. That was kind of the jargon that they said, well, people say Red Stars. No one ever says like Chicago Red Stars because it's too many syllables. And I'm like, yeah, but that's great. It's hearty. It's a lot to say at once. It's nice. Chicago Red Stars. But yeah, they're the way that they said it is they were like, we want people to say Chicago more. And I'm like, you're definitely getting people to say Chicago more because no one wants to say Stars.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
All
right, Claire, what's coming up down the pike for you content wise?
Yeah, so we are, again, it's kind of a nice moment, a little bit of a lull in the women's soccer schedule. But yes, the late sub will be back in the middle of January for the U.S. Women's National Team, January camps and games. And you can find that on kind of all streaming platforms. And then my other main thing is 5 days a week, I write the Premier Women's Sports newsletter, the Just Women's Sports newsletter. So you can go to our website and sign up for that and get all of your women's sports news in your inbox 5 days a week. Anything you might want to know, we got in there.
Oh, thank you so much, Claire. Thank you for waking up and joining us really early in the morning here. Much appreciate you giving us the details and the latest on the Trinity Rodman saga.
Amazing. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Claire.
All right. Thanks, guys, for your comments during that interview. And thank you so much to Claire for joining us. And it is a free-for-all Friday here. We got rapid fire news.
One thing,
run down.
Bring in Chris Sal here, because this is very true. When I hear Stars, my brain instantly switches to thinking Dallas Stars. And I will tell you, I am old enough that I hate the name Dallas Stars, because to me, those are the North Stars. Those are the Dallas Stars. Although, whatever. There's a star on the Texas flag, so I guess it kind of works. Just annoys me. That's all.
Yeah, and there's stars like there's a million youth teams called Stars, right?
Yeah,
and then there's a team here in Michigan, there once was a team called Stars here in Michigan. So it's confusing. And there was no other Red Stars in the United States, as far as I'm aware. That was a good name.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, let's move right along. We got Free for All Friday. So subscribe as we're going if you haven't already. Become a member. You get on-screen comments, bonus content, and access to the Morning Kickaround Discord server. So join the movement, become an MK Ultra, and then let's get our free-for-all going. Let's roll it. Amongst the MLS clubs without a soccer-specific stadium, of course, New England Revolution in the mix. And yesterday, a new video popped up with a little bit more regarding the new stadium.
Are we? Well, okay. The renderings. We're trying to figure this out, and I think we're trying to. So I saw Seth McComber post this on his social media, which is actually where I grabbed it. So I do have the video to play here for us with the audio, Rob. I saw him post this. He's Sethman31, I think, over on Blue Sky. He might be still on Twitter, too. And I wasn't sure if this is new, because I don't think the renderings are new. I think the renderings are almost 2 years old, or a year and a half old at the very least. What we might have new is sort of the way that they're dressing this up, the pitch they're making, and then the Don Garber element. So I'm going to throw this up on the stage here.
New England Revolution unveiled plans for a world-class stadium and waterfront park along the Mystic River in Everett, Massachusetts. The
Right,
proposed
we
site
got
is
that.
currently occupied by a decommissioned power
The
plant.
site
that
there
was
is
once a
being
source of energy
identified.
for the area,
I'll let
and
it play for
now
a little while.
sits
We'll listen.
unused on highly visible waterfront real estate that has been contaminated by decades of industrial use. An environmental justice community is generally defined as a neighborhood or area that is predominantly home to minority or low-income populations and that experiences a disproportionate burden of environmental hazards and
Now, right out the gate, they're like, hey, we're building a stadium for us, but really this is about the community. This is really about helping an underprivileged community, Rob, which I get it. It's a leverage point for the Revs and for the project, but it is also very cynical. Let's not pretend it's not.
No, it's not going to benefit anyone's pocketbooks or anything like that. Never.
I mean, yeah, of course. Let's see.
health risks. There are 31 environmental justice populations located within 1 mile of the proposed site, and the city maintains the second highest percentage of industrial zones in Greater Boston.
It's really polluted in Boston, huh?
Yeah, Boston's dirty. Let's not. There's a whole song about the Charles River being dirty. I love that dirty water. They play it after Red Sox games. It's a
Really
Dropkick Murphys song. All right, here we go.
This project will significantly benefit the surrounding community, fostering economic growth, social inclusion, community engagement, and public wellness. The transformation of this blighted property will also serve
Giving me very high school video. Like I'm watching this in a classroom right now. The teacher has turned off the lights, sitting there. Kids are talking in the back. She's having to tell them to shut up and watch the video.
I'm falling asleep. I was a bad fall asleep in a video guy.
Yeah, all right, here we go.
as an economic catalyst for the region. This includes generating new tax revenues, creating job opportunities, and encouraging additional development in the surrounding area.
I'm super excited to have the stadium here. Born and raised in Everett, I grew up in the city where the landfill was my backyard. Route 16 was filled with marshes. We were used to be a football city, now we are a football city.
Feel
Very
bad for the
clever.
guy.
The comprehensive project plan seeks to revitalize the area by converting a decommissioned power plant into a vibrant event destination.
I mean, let's not pretend that's not prettier to look at than a decommissioned power plant. Come on, like that's definitely better. And
Yeah,
of course, go ahead.
I was just going to say rehabilitating an unused industrial site is definitely positive, regardless.
I'm not. No one's saying that any of this is negative, right? You just have to wonder about the motivation sometimes and how these things are presented. And again, I think in all cases, and while I would love for the Revolution to have their own stadium somewhere within the vicinity of actual Boston, let's not, let's remember that there's this question of should public money or any public resource go to supporting a private enterprise, which is what a professional soccer team is. All right, let's continue.
Complete with open green spaces at a waterfront park that will be open to the public year-round, and facilities for hosting MLS matches.
See, it's
concerts,
unrealistic.
and
They're celebrating on
community
goal.
events.
That's mean. That's mean, Rob.
Yeah.
Nice park. Future waterfront. It says it'll be publicly open. The park will be open all the time. So obviously, when there's no soccer, you can still go and hang out at the park.
Part of the
Conceptual renderings for the 4-acre waterfront park include green spaces for recreation, small business collaboration, educational programs, multicultural experiences, fitness classes, and more. The community's input will be solicited to determine what will be included in the design of the park.
Now, we've seen the positive impact of our soccer stadiums on more than 24 communities throughout the United States and Canada. And we know, and I can assure you, that the Revolution's new stadium will do the same for Greater Boston.
Combining a world-class stadium with a unique waterfront park, this development will create a valuable community resource. Beyond hosting professional soccer matches, concerts, and community events, the revitalization of the site will generate a positive economic impact and become a dynamic focal point for public enjoyment.
All right, so there you go, Rob. That is the video that, again, got shared by Seth Becomer. I saw Yadish Mahalik, former Revolution player, a guy I've worked with on the radio, say, let's get this done. They're trying to create momentum around this idea of building a stadium in Everett, Massachusetts. Worth pointing out, this is from Pablo. I'm concerned about the stadium site not being T accessible. There are no T stations, which is the subway system in Boston. There are no T stations in Everett. To get to Everett from the T, you'll have to jump on a bus. So it is not currently accessible just via the subway. And yeah, that's not ideal. I still think this is a massive upgrade from the drive or the long bus ride or whatever that you have to take from anywhere sort of north of the city or even west of Boston to Foxborough. One thing to talk about with this, though, is there are going to be fans who get disenfranchised by the Revs moving to Everett. And again, Everett is not perfectly located. It's not downtown Boston. This is not, this is not Fenway Park. This is not whatever the Celtic building is called now. I'm going to cough, but continue.
Yeah, you have a good point there. And Thomas, in the comments adds it's like, this is where the land is, right? Boston's one of the old cities, and it's already, thoroughly built up. I don't have on the ground experience in Boston, but from what I understand, old city, everything, most of the land is accounted for, right? That was one of the biggest hurdles to getting a stadium there anyway, right?
You can't build in the city of Boston. There is just no space. I went to school in Boston for a little bit. There's a very good podcast, if you're a nerd like me, about the Big Dig and how long it took Boston to figure out how to reroute tunnels and things to get traffic better in the city of Boston. Red tape, politics, corruption, all kinds of things are at play when you try to build anything within the environment of Boston, Massachusetts, or even cities like Everett or Medford or any of these places.
It's interesting that it brought up that there was no T stations, and in the FAQs where this video is hosted, it says, the fans are encouraged to utilize public transportation. So is that a little disingenuous, or is there, maybe just buses is what they're referring to? An interesting thing that they're saying that they're exploring the option of water taxis and ferries. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I guess that would help somewhat. You're going to have to get unique. You're going to have to get creative rather with this. And again, I can't speak to what it would take to get from, and it depends on where you live. Right. I mean, there are people who live south of Boston who are going to want to go to these games. There are going to be people who live north of Boston who are going to want to go to these games. There are going to be people out live out west. Again, like maybe not as far as Worcester, but I imagine there are some fans in Worcester that maybe this is more accessible some way, but how? Right. Here is our friend Mike Thomas in Ultra. Feels Chestery, that's Chester, Pennsylvania, where the Philadelphia Union have their stadium. In theory, some people take regional rail and then jump on a shuttle. In theory, again, and if you have ever done the trip from Philadelphia proper, from downtown Philly or whatever, to Chester, it's not a quick trip, right? It's not Philly. It is a completely different city down the road a bit. I don't know that Everett, Everett is going to feel that way. Right, I mentioned the Charles River. It's not on the Charles River. It's on the Mystic River. It's like, again, it's one of those places that sort of is outside of the general vicinity of what people think of as Boston.
But where is the Revolution Stadium now? It's like an hour away, right? In a completely different direction?
Yeah, Foxborough is a significant drive south, like a much, much, much farther away from Boston. And this is what I was trying to say is that you move the team from Foxborough, where people have been going for 30 years, right? To support this team because they're an original MLS franchise and they've always played in Foxborough, whether it was the old Gillette Stadium or the new one. You move them to Everett, which again is not Boston, but close enough that it becomes more of a Boston team. And you are now taking people who live in Connecticut or Rhode Island or some of those southern Massachusetts cities, and you're saying you're going to have to come up here now. Now, you could say, well, it's only fair. Right, the people who live in Boston or north of Boston have to drive all the way down to Foxborough, take the train all the way down to Foxborough. Now it's your turn for the next 30 years or whatever it is. But it does fundamentally change the idea of what it is to be a Revs fan in that region.
Yeah, I think all the teams across, not only in the United States, but overseas, when obviously something is needed, but something changes about the club or the team when the home changes. And like we talk about the importance of having a permanent home, not just a rental space, having some place that you own or that is permanently yours means a whole lot more. But just like Tottenham and West Ham and those teams that are hugely established, they significantly change their vibe And all that changed when they changed homes, and that'll happen too for New England Revolution if that happens. I mean, people have felt disenfranchised, but I'm sure there's pros and cons with it. Some people will be disappointed. Some people will be elated, I'm sure.
So I'm going to pull up the map here, kind of live, and share it with you. This is Boston, right? So I'm going to zoom in. Actually, let me show you where Foxborough is. This is Foxborough down here. See my
way down there in the
cursor?
south?
Way down there. That's Foxborough. That's where the Revs currently play. It's where the New England Patriots play, right? And it's why you are the New England Patriots and the New England Revolution. Because you can't really call yourself Boston if you're playing in Foxborough, and you definitely want to. If you're playing down there, you want to get people from Providence to come up, right? It's probably about the same drive. I actually don't know it. I don't think I've ever done it. Maybe even shorter for people from Providence or from Connecticut to go up to Foxborough to see games. But you're moving to Everett, right? So this is the Mystic River here. The northern branch here is the Mystic River. And that's in this general area here. Let me see if I can go back. So you have this is Everett, right? See where it says Encore Boston? I believe that's a casino. This is the general area where the stadium is going to go. I actually don't have it mapped out, and I'm not smart enough to figure out where it's. But this is the general area, right?
Mystic River.
Again, Mystic River. It's north of Boston, right? It's a drive. You're not, if you live in Boston, you're going to take a train maybe and take a bus, but it's not like you're in the city. So it is still a suburban location. It's just a different suburban location. It's just a different vibe now for a team. And maybe they suddenly become a team that attracts people from New Hampshire and places like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I was curious. Is the suburban sprawl go north there in Boston? Like, is there just, is it?
Well, you can see these. These are all the populated areas, right? The lighter colored areas are the more populated areas. And you've got Lowell, which is a pretty sizable Massachusetts city. You've got Salem up here on the coast. I again, like the whether or not people who maybe live in these areas out to the west are a little bit more likely to go than they would have been before. I don't know. I don't have the data on that, right? And maybe Massachusetts fans of the show, ultras who maybe know a little bit more about Boston, because it's been 25 years since I lived there, can give us a sense of what it might end up being like.
Yeah, we'll follow this story as it progresses, but as of now, maybe a sign that this stadium thing is getting a little bit more real in Boston. So let's move right along with our Free for All Friday. Next topic, let's move it. Per reporting in The Athletic, Major League Soccer is likely moving to a 5-division format when the calendar flip happens in 2027. So conferences gone, 5 divisions. What do you think about this format?
Yeah, so here are the divisions as per The Athletic. Now, I want to tell you my timeline on this. I first saw an inkling of this from Bruce McGuire, who is one of the OG American soccer bloggers, goes all the way back to like the early 2000s with his blog Denord. If you were old like me, you have a lot of love and respect for Bruce McGuire. Bruce is the man. Now, he posted on his Blue Sky account that he had heard from a couple of people that Minnesota United, the club he supports, he's a Minnesota guy, was going to be in the division that is outlined here: Chicago, Minnesota, St. Louis, Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Columbus, which, as I told producer Jenny earlier, and got a chuckle out of her, it's the Ope division is what that might be. Or you want to call it the Norris, you want to call it the Black and Blue, you can do all those things. And Midwest, whatever, it's something like that. That was then not picked up. I don't know if it's the reason that they covered it, or the reason they reported on it, but Tom Bogert and Paul Tenorio went to The Athletic and posted this, which is every division as currently proposed by Major League Soccer. So you've got what looks to be a Pacific Northwest division with the Quakes, Real Salt Lake, and Colorado added. You've got a California and Texas division, which is a little bit more travel than a lot of these will have. You've got Chicago, Minnesota, St. Louis, Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Columbus, like I mentioned. Then you have sort of a Northeastern division with 2 Canadian teams because they're Northeastern teams: Montreal, Toronto, Revs, Red Bulls, NYCFC, and Philly. And then you've got sort of a Southern division plus DC, which is Mid-Atlantic, DC, Nashville, Atlanta, Charlotte, Miami, and Orlando. Somebody's calling this the Publix division. I would say that doesn't apply because there are no Publix in DC as far as I'm aware, because I live in DC and I have never seen a Publix. But figure out your own naming. I do think it's fun to think about what these should be named, though. That is a funny thing.
I'm curious if they'll name them or if they'll just put something generic like Southeast, Northeast, or if they'll be like the sponsorship, like you said, like it's the McDonald's Midwest.
No. I hope we don't sell sponsorships for divisions. That is icky. I was thinking that, the old school NHL way, like the Norris division, would be fun. I just don't know how you do that without upsetting a certain fan base, because if you're pulling forward like names from the past, are there enough sort of like big figures who aren't tied to one specific team that you could name the division after them? Probably not. We're going to get geographic divisions because that's what it's easiest for people to parse. Although I don't know, again, I don't know what you call that SoCal Texas division. The Southwest? I guess you call it the Southwest.
Yeah, I think that's the only real way to describe that. And you feel for basically flying over those the New Mexicos and the other state that's in between there, but just say San Jose appears to be the loser here, and they're just flying back and forth over New Mexico and Arizona is the other state, Arizona and New Mexico, to get to Texas back and forth from Southern California.
Yeah, I do see some ideas. We had In-N-Out versus Whataburger. That would be the Southwest, with California versus Texas, if you know your burgers. Crystal versus White Castle. Okay. I like what Mike Thomas is saying about my idea about naming these divisions after people, which again is not going to happen. I'm not pretending it's going to happen. Executives, maybe. So we could have the Abbott division, the Mark Abbott division. We could have the
Don Garber,
the Garber division, obviously. The Quartermanch division. We have the Dan Quartermanch. You have to really be.
That's a deep cut. That's a deep cut there.
To know Dan Quartermanch. Anyway, yeah, This in the way that this is being presented at the Athletic is that this is the best way for them to figure out how to sort of maintain some control on travel, have a format schedule-wise that makes sense. I'm not going to say it's ideal, because ideal is balanced. Ideal is you play everybody home and away, just like the English Premier League or most of the top leagues do. The problem you have in MLS is that there are 30 teams and you can't do it. And obviously that would also preclude you from expanding more if you were like, we're going to have to always have a balanced schedule. 30 teams, 29 times 2, Robert, is 58. You're not playing 58 regular season games. You just are not doing that. So if you want to maintain a 34-game schedule, you do this, because you play everybody in your division twice, right? So that is 10 games that you will play in your division, and then you play everybody else in the league one time, and you get to 34. That's how you do it.
I think it's interesting the way that Tom Bogert and Paul Tenorio frame this, that this is likely. Like, you don't often see that in reporting. It's like sources say this is happening or this is rumored, but saying something is likely is kind of an interesting way to frame it. But I'm looking at these. They said that they're still open. Like, these divisions are not final yet. I said that maybe in this particular set of circumstances that San Jose, I was looking at a different division grouping when I said San Jose was going to Texas. They're actually in a different direction.
They lose out. They lose out in the sense that they don't get multiple games per year against the SoCal teams. And while I don't think you would say that LAFC versus San Jose is necessarily as intense a rivalry, certainly the Galaxy and San Jose have always been a rivalry in MLS going back to the earliest days of the league. And we even called it the California Classico for a while. So, that thing about rivalries and sort of how they are being impacted by this is an element of it. But I obviously think you can't be too precious about that, or you won't be able to figure this out geographically.
Yeah, I was going to say, looking at these different divisions as they're listed here, I can't really think of anyone else outside of San Jose that is like particularly put out or is like on an island compared to the rest of their division. I'm trying to pick. I mean, is there anyone in there that's really like, I've really been shortchanged here?
Well, okay, look, again, you kind of have to appreciate the history of MLS more than maybe a lot of new fans do to think that DC United got screwed a little bit. Because while DC stinks and, there's no guarantee they're going to get better, if you're a fan of DC United, or maybe you're a fan of the Red Bulls and you appreciate what that's been, you're going to think this is not great because you're not in division with your rival. DC and Red Bulls have been rivals, again, since the beginning of the league when they were the Metro Stars, because they were fairly close in geography in a league that, didn't have as many teams. Now, obviously, you've jammed Philadelphia in there, And Philly is trying to foster rivalries with teams in the Northeast. You've got NYCFC who has entered, which has become the biggest rival to the Red Bulls naturally, right? So, and again, they don't really have a defined rivalry for DC because they haven't been relevant. But if you are thinking about history, there is something to that.
Mike Thomas is saying that maybe DC might have a bone to pick, perhaps, and all that. But I don't think you can make everyone happy with this. And I did see online a joke in reference to this. Might have been a quote tweet or something of this news story yesterday. But it's like, we don't really have to memorize this because the format will probably change in a couple of years anyway.
Yeah, that is part of it too. That there is always a sense that nothing in MLS is for very long. I was going to say nothing is forever. That is absolutely true. Nothing is for very long is also a part of this deal when it comes to MLS. You never get comfortable because you never expect it to be around. And I think this is also true for the playoff format, Rob. And I see some people in the chat are kind of debating that. Like, what does a playoff format look like? Now, there is a little bit of a hint in the Athletic piece. It says nothing is done yet on that front, and they're still considering various proposals. I don't know if you have something in mind that you think makes sense when it comes to a playoff format. I don't think there's an ideal one. Like that. Let's just be honest. There's not an ideal one. But I would say that I would be fine with let's cut down on the number of teams. I just don't know that they're going to do that now with 30 sides across the league.
This is off the cuff, but I see in the reporting there's references to the Aussie rules football setup and stuff like that. There's in this athletic story, it does play out a couple different options as far as playoffs. But what comes to mind right now, I don't think it'll be implemented because it cuts a lot of teams out. But I would say, and it's not balanced schedule, obviously, but I would say playoffs would be the top 10 points getters in the whole league. Yeah. And then so it would be 5 from each. Top 10 points getters, and then the top 2 overall get a first round bye.
Man, you just again, I think it's a keep it simple, stupid kind of situation when it comes to the playoff format. But if you're doing divisions, you're going to have to absolutely incentivize teams to win their division. So you're doing more games within division. That's why the division exists. So what you're saying is the division winners have to be in. Period. Division winners have to go into the playoffs. So that's 6 division winners right out the gates. Right, so now or 5 divisions. 5
divisions. So I think adding the 5 best runners, or I guess would it just be the top 2 then, or the 5 best runners up? Or
I mean, if you do top 2 in each division, you get to 10. You're obviously going to have a wild card round or a first round to get your numbers to 8. So then you can have the format that works to deliver a final. But man, I don't know. Like again, I would like to see it kept simple. I would like to keep it relatively. I would like to keep the playoff field small to obviously bring up the value of those regular season games, which has long been a criticism of Major League Soccer. You're going to flip your calendar over? You're going to ask people to go to games that could potentially be in very cold weather? Well, they better matter. They better count, Rob, or what are you doing here?
Yeah, indeed. And we'll follow along with this story, of course, and the ramifications it could have on Major League Soccer. And, big things coming. This is in conjunction with a calendar flip. So 2027 could be a real head spinner with a calendar change and a format change.
Yeah, I mean, I also bring this in from Chris, and I don't pay enough attention to the NBA, but now that he says this, it does ring a bell. The NBA doesn't have division winners auto-qualify. It's just a matter of pure math that winning your division all but secures your playoff spot. So he's saying, that's just to kind of foster the rivalry within the region, I guess, and obviously more games local or somewhat regionally. And then, again, they do sort of a single table for each conference in terms of qualifying for the playoffs. Could MLS do that? Could they act? But this is 5, and you're not dividing this in terms of conferences. They're not saying we have divisions in the Eastern Conference and divisions in the Western Conference because 5 doesn't divide it evenly. So, yeah, man, I don't know. There's some stuff to consider.
5 division winners and the 5 best also rans would be how I would do it. Because, I mean, a 10-team field, that's still a good amount of teams, but it makes it very competitive to win your division. I think that ratchets up the intensity.
You would have 5 division winners. Then your top 3 points getters are into the quarterfinals is what that would be, right? And then, or not the quarterfinals, the round of 16. And then you would have 2 teams who play off against one another or whatever. You would have to find a way. That would be 8, but you would have to find a way to get the numbers right. So 5 qualify, and then you have to play a mini round or mini playoff between the rest of those qualifiers to get your final 3 teams to make the 8-team. I guess that would be a quarterfinal round at that point, an 8-team quarterfinal. Sorry, my math is terrible today.
I mean, you don't claim to be a math expert, and so we won't hold that against you here today, Jason. But
not 8 games. 8 games would be 16 teams. 8 teams is a quarterfinal round. So, yeah.
I was called out in the comments for having audible disdain for Major League Soccer. I just think that if we're cutting down the playoff field and every game becomes more important, a lot of those things kind of fade away. And for that commenter, my direct interaction with Major League Soccer has not been that great. Michigan, Major League Soccer, there's no team here. It is not on the radar. You have to very specifically seek it out to have that. And the other teams I've interacted with, Chicago Fire, which when I was, in Chicago was in disarray and not necessarily a positive organization. And then the next closest one is Columbus Crew, which the league literally tried to just move away. So my personal tangible interactions with Major League Soccer wasn't great, but things like this, making the playoffs harder to get to, would add some positivity to my outlook.
Yeah, I think. Look, I've covered MLS for 20 years, or almost 20 years at this point. Like, I appreciate the league, but that doesn't mean that I don't see reasons for it to improve or areas that it can get better, or I don't think that there are things that it does wrong. It is the biggest soccer league in this country, and sort of by default, that means we're going to ask a lot of it to, again, carry forward the flag of American soccer. For better or worse, the world views American soccer through the lens of MLS. That the national team matters. I'm talking about men's game, obviously. The men's national team matters, and that can burgeon the reputation of American soccer. But really, it's about the league, right? That's how people view you. Is your league good? Is it competitive? Does it have good players? And again, just like we talked about with the NWSL, there might be a lot of things that MLS can't control that they have to fight against in terms of perception. Don't make it more complicated. Make your regular season matter. Again, you're flipping your schedule over. That's dramatic. We're going to see if fans follow.
All right, we got a couple segments to go here on our Free For All Friday. So as we transition to our next topic, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and be like Pilkman earlier in the week that became our latest MK Ultra. Be like them. Become an Ultra. Support this show. All right, let's move on. A note that kind of slipped through the cracks here. The Jägermeister Cup, the inter-league competition for USL, has a brand new sponsor for the 3rd edition. It's now going to be called a Prinks Tires USL Cup.
What is a Prinks tire? Is that, maybe this is why you do this. It's brand awareness. Jason Davis doesn't know who Prinks is. Now he's heard of Prinks. Boom. That's money well spent on the part of Prinks. I will say that the problem with this, and it's a small one because obviously the USL needs a sponsor for this. I'm not begrudging them the desire to have a sponsor or the need for one and all of that. But Jägermeister Cup flows off the tongue. Jägermeister Cup sounds interesting.
Sounds like a party.
Jägermeister Cup, that's incredible. That's the Jägermeister should have a cup. What are you talking about? This is the universe bending to the correct direction. Not for so much for Prinks tires. Not so much.
Oh man, just thinking about Jägermeister throws me back to my college days when I worked at the local college beer and party store, and so we'd kind of be sneaky, and there's promotional giveaways around the holidays. My best yoink from one of those was a pewter shooter, a real elaborate pewter shot glass with like horns on it and stuff. Pewter shooter. Pretty awesome. But the USL Cup 3rd edition, brand new sponsor, and interestingly called, they are not a title sponsor, they're an entitlement sponsor, which I thought was a little interesting.
Marketing language evolves, I guess. And you and I are not up on our marketing language. So yeah, I don't know.
For better or worse.
They're entitled to have their title or to be part of the title. They're entitled to that. Is that what it is, I guess? Obviously the thing about this tournament too, Rob, is it is unique, right? In the sense that it puts two divisions against one another in professional soccer. Obviously it's all within the USL ecosystem. In light of the fact the U.S. Open Cup continues to get bastardized, and MLS has decided they're not interested in competing fully, and now USL won't compete fully. This tournament, as corporate as it is, kind of takes on bigger importance and more interest for a lot of people. And with promotion and relegation supposedly coming from the USL, that is also one of the things here. And you can definitely reverse engineer their thinking and imagine that they went, hey, let's do this cup because then when we do pro rel, people will have a sense of what it's going to be like when teams kind of like play. What's the quality difference? And it'll have, and of course, this is also just an idea borrowed more or less from England. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but they went, oh, they have a League Cup. We'll just do a League Cup. We'll just do our own League Cup, which makes sense.
And it definitely helps out the League One sides. When we had our conversation with AV Alta earlier in the summer, they really benefited from it because not too many teams within USL 1 nearby them in California, but the USL Cup or the Jägermeister Cup gave them the opportunity for more local games. And the representative from AV Alta definitely sung high praises for it. And it's, it just has a fun name in general. And so the format goes this way. So the teams from the championship and League One are grouped into 7 different groups, and the winners of those group and one wild card will advance to the knockout stage. And this will span from April, and the final weekend will be in October. So this is going to be going on in the background throughout the summer.
Do you think that USL and the way that the Open Cup is now being treated, and look, if MLS is going to do what they did, it's certainly within the rights of USL to say we don't want all of our teams participating, or we have other competitions too and all that stuff. But do you think that decision on the USL's part, because they could have leaned into the Open Cup, they could have said the Open Cup is going to be our playground. If MLS doesn't want to fully engage with it, we'll be the league, we'll be the competitions that are fully engaged with the history of the US Open Cup. And that, again, you have undermined that argument now with all the teams not playing. Maybe they're prioritizing this, again, with that idea that as they move towards the first division and promotion and relegation, so much of what's going to happen is sort of within their own ecosystem, and they control it.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Open Cup getting dustier and dustier. I mean, the League's Cup on MLS side, USL Cup on the USL side, those teams filling in their calendars and not much room for Open Cup looking down the road. We got at least one more segment to go. Let's move right along. And as we transition, if that button under the window doesn't say subscribe, hit that button now. Hit that subscribe button. And I just thought of a bonus segment in my brain that I kind of want to get to, but we got to bump up some numbers before we can do that. All right, let's move right along. We got another segment here on Free for All Friday. Let's go. I hate to round out a Friday like this, but news came out this week that watch parties for World Cup 2026 are going to be ticketed events. The positivity of, being there with your fellow fan. You can't afford those massively priced tickets, but at least you can go to the Fan Fest. But I mean, granted, they're not very expensive. We see a receipt here from one of the MK Ultras that purchased it. It's a $10 ticket for the Fan Fest in New York, New Jersey, 13 and some change after fees. And if we're going to undermine the public good or the people's game, the people's tournament, charging for people to stand and watch TV together is a bit rich.
Yeah, I mean, this is deeper, down the hole of despair around this tournament now. I was just telling somebody in my attempts at Espanol to speak Spanish in Puerto Rico with my family. I was just telling somebody yesterday, one of the tios, who is more of a basketball guy, but he was asking me about the Copa Mundial coming to the United States, and I explained to him that it cost $500, $500 to go to one game at the World Cup. And obviously I was being general with that. But there is obviously, you look at the ticket price and you go, oh my God, sticker shock. I can't possibly do this. What are you doing, FIFA? All right, I'll go watch the tournament with a bunch of people and I'll go to the Fan Fest and maybe they'll be selling beer or whatever, but I'll be able to go and just be there. And no, you have to pay. Now, this is not exorbitant. Like $10 is not exorbitant, Rob,
But look at the top row of that graphic, early bird tickets. And usually that means that's the early pricing.
Ticket prices are going to go up for this. And you were pointing out that in Kansas City, they don't yet have early bird tickets for sale. They're not asking you to pay. They're just registering interest on the website for the Kansas City Fan Fest. This is Liberty State Park, obviously across the water from New York City. The games for New York will be in New Jersey, so it makes sense that the Fan Fest, I guess, would be at this park that, you know, is there right across the water with the views of everything there. I just, you know, man, I really hate that this is what's going on, but I also think this is a unique opportunity for all of us as American soccer fans to both reject the tickets, reject the prices they're asking us to pay. And I'm not under any illusions that there won't be a lot of people in the stadiums, that they won't still sell a bunch of tickets and people will pay these prices. I know there are people paying these crazy ticket prices. But if you are actively choosing not to, and it doesn't make any sense for you, and even if you have the money, you are just disgusted by what FIFA is doing, and they're charging for fan fests, well, let's just set up our own. Let's create a network underground. I mean, I don't know. Do we have a message board where we can get word out? Rob, can we be? I don't want. You know, I'm not claiming any credit for this, but can we be like a focal point? Can we be a node for fans launching their own? You were talking about like doing one at your house with your neighbors, but I mean something even like a little bit bigger than that. Like, is there an opportunity here for us to really start the movement of independent, free fan festivals popping up around the World Cup in 2026?
Yeah, my level of experience for this World Cup has progressively just like gone down. So, you know, for obviously like everyone else, 10, 20 years, been waiting for the day when the World Cup comes to our shores. And I you know, I'll be there. And then it was like, well, the price is maybe I won't be there. Maybe I'll go to a fan fest. Well, if it's going to be late, maybe I'm just going to be at home. Like, it might be fun and have a great time, but like having a projector on my garage is not the World Cup experience that I expected.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. I look, maybe I'm rationalizing this a little bit. And again, I will declare that I don't yet know what my involvement will be on the ground covering the tournament for SiriusXM FC. I don't actually have that planned out, and there's a very good possibility that I will be in places in official capacity around all of the FIFA events, right? So call me a hypocrite if you want, but I think if I had if I was not doing any of that, obviously I would look at those ticket prices and go, I don't think so. I think that's pretty normal. I would look at the Fan Fest and say, well, if they're charging, even if it's $10, man, you're corporatizing something that shouldn't be corporatized, or you're charging for something that should be an opportunity to just gather and you know, you're making so much money from the tickets. What the hell? Why do you need to charge me to go to the Fan Fest? And then, you know, well, I guess what I would say is I'm rationalizing the idea that maybe I just want to go to bars. Maybe that's a better experience. Like I go back to 2010 and the World Cup and the Landon Donovan goal against Algeria. And that video that has, you know, millions of views now, that is literally just bouncing around from bar to bar to bar as people watch that goal go in and celebrate. And those people had an incredible moment that they will never forget. And it didn't matter that they weren't in the stadium. Now, obviously, the stadium was in South Africa and not in their backyard. And so there's a little bit of a tragedy happening if you're in a bar just a couple miles away from where a game is happening and you can't go because it's too expensive. But I think you can get a lot out of that experience.
I was actually on the air at my college radio station when Landon Donovan scored that goal. And it was one of the very first things we streamed on our phones. Like I was doing the show playing, you know, college music and stuff, and then had that. And I actually opened up the mic as me and my co-hosts were like freaking out and screaming. I don't know if any of the listeners had any context of what we were screaming about, but an experience that we'll never forget. And during this conversation, return of a very familiar name, one of our very earliest dedicated listeners, getting back into membership, Harry, one of San Antonio's super supporters. Welcome back into the fold. Not sure if you've been viewing in the background, not commenting as much, but glad to have you back on board Soccer Zombie. Tom, it'll be cheaper to go to Morocco in 2030. Yikes. I mean, people were saying the Qatar trips were more cost effective than the one in our backyard. So
Well, in Qatar, if your team was playing in multiple stadiums, you didn't have to go anywhere. You could have one hotel room and just, ping around Doha because that's where all the games were. Here, obviously, we're talking about vast geographical distances if you want to follow your team. The other thing is somebody asked if they had charged for the Fan Fest in previous World Cups. And no, this is the first time that they have ever charged anything to attend a Fan Fest. And again, what we don't yet know, and I don't think it matters in terms of how ugly and gross this is, but what we don't know is if they're going to do this in other fan fests beyond New Jersey, because this is what we have evidence of right now.
Yeah, Ryan, one of the other MK Ultras, he sent a link into the Discord, shout out, become a member, get access to the Discord, saying that the watch parties in Kansas City, it just was asking to pre-register. It didn't have any charges or fees just yet, but it's early stage.
Doesn't that sound like the kind of thing they do where they go, oh, we have 50,000 people interested. Well, we're going to charge them. Now we're going to make it cost something because we have so much demand. We know we can sell tickets to this thing because people want to be there. And again, that's one of the places. I believe that Fan Fest in Kansas City is like the Power and Light District, I think is what they call that area.
That's square, yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the places that shows up in that video I was talking about when Landon Donovan scored against Algeria. People just watching the tournament there. Now, obviously, that was not in the home country, and obviously it was free back then. But it shouldn't cost you anything to go to the Power and Light District to watch games in Kansas City. And obviously, we need Fan Fests or something like it in places where there are no games. Again, I live in Washington, D.C., and whether I get a chance to go out, and they were talking about doing a Fan Fest in D.C. I don't believe one is currently planned. I'll have to double check that. But if they're going to charge to say go down to the mall and watch games, not doing it. Nope, sorry.
It is wild, though, to think of the lift that it might take to have a Fan Fest for all the games, because with the larger field, what is there, like 137 different games in this tournament? So if they're hosting events for all those games, and it's the tournament's 6 weeks long now, like that's a big ask on the municipality. But FIFA has these FIFA zones where they're basically like making these like FIFA countries, and that's part of the reason why cities like Chicago didn't want to be involved, because FIFA was so onerous with their expectations.
I think there's a very good chance because of the ticket prices, obviously because there are a lot of people in cities that don't host games that are going to want to watch them. Partly because it's going to be blazing hot during some of these games. You won't even want to be outside in certain places in this country. You want to be inside. I imagine there's going to be a crush of interest in watching games in bars, sports bars, those kind of things. Obviously, we have soccer bars, and they will be the first place people will think about, the people, the hardcores. But if you're just a regular Joe, are you going to be able to go to your Buffalo Wild Wings and watch the games? Are they thinking, and that's a corporation, and I really don't want to highlight unless they want to support us on Morning Kickaround, unless they want to sponsor us.
morningkickaround@gmail.com for all business inquiries. Yeah, actually, is this an appropriate time to talk about it?
I would look if BWW isn't charging people to go watch games in their restaurants, then we'll support publicizing watch parties in those places. But obviously, they're going to be smaller places, non-corporations, the non-chain places in various cities where they're going to want to take advantage of this. And I'm saying, I hope they're getting their ducks in a row. I think now or beginning of the year is when you start to really think about what are we going to do around the World Cup. And I've never run a restaurant. I did broadcast from a restaurant, my old show that I was doing back in 2018 when the United States wasn't playing, and there was some interest. But this one's happening here, right? And again, if you can, especially with the diaspora communities that are here and with the people that are going to travel, if you can give them a place to watch games and ply them with beer and give them stuff to eat, then you can make a lot of money in this tournament.
I said it on Wednesday's show that I think the USL and all the leagues that are playing through the World Cup, MK Rooster Wing special, I like that. But American Groundhopper is good here, because I was saying you should market you can't afford to go to the World Cup, see the game, in its purest in your backyard or your local team, but having World Cup watch parties at your USL game might be a good way to have a double bill. That might be a good way. Not only are you the alternative affordable option to see your hometown team, but also, maybe bring everyone onto the field afterwards and put up a pop-up screen and watch a World Cup game before or after your USL game.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think so. Andrew is saying in the chat that maybe you'll have to register for a spot at your soccer bar because it's going to be that intense, the demand. And I hope that's true, right? That would be a sign of the strength of soccer in America if that's true. But your point about USL games, I mean, it doesn't even have to be USL games. This is going to be during the part of the year when those NPSL and USL2 teams will be playing some of their schedule. So if you have an opportunity, I don't think you can charge to watch World Cup games. That probably violates, some law. But you can certainly say, we're going to pop up a screen, we're going to show this game, and then hang out because we'll have a family fan fest, and then we're going to play our game at 7:30 or whatever it is, depending on the schedule of the day in the World Cup. But if you can do that, yeah, that is a brilliant way to attract fans of soccer and then give them an opportunity to sample your product that is right there in their backyard potentially.
Yeah, definitely some room for creativity. It doesn't all have to be negative by the sticker shock that we're all kind of working through collectively here together. But is there anything else in the Free for All Friday that you'd like to address, Jason, and something that we didn't get to?
I don't think so. I mean, Wilfred Nancy still has his job as we're doing this show. Maybe he'll still be in the job come the weekend. I don't know. That's something we were talking about. Other than that, I don't know. Rob,
Yeah.
we're creeping close to the end of the year.
Yeah, we are getting closer to the end of the year. And there's a hypothetical that I think we'll save for Monday's show. But shout out to Harry for becoming an MK Ultra here during the show. Great to have Harry back in the mix. Business inquiries, morningkickaround@gmail.com. And I'll say, guys, business inquiries, if you work for a business or you've got any connections to a business that might have any interest in spreading their own word and marketing themselves, that would be great. We're getting kind of to a crossroads here when we get into the new year. My remote position came to its conclusion, which allowed me to spend my mornings doing this. And there's not that many jobs like that out there. And I'm interviewing, and there's a possibility that our progress here on Morning Kickaround might get railroaded, or we'd have to have an extreme reformatting of the show if come New Year I do get a new 9 to 5. So business inquiries and give us the ability to do this, more full time. I want to be more well read. I want to have more contacts and more research and more journalism on the show. Do this better in general, but to keep the show going, we need some business prospects.
We can pull back the curtain and be honest about this for a second. I looked because I got moved to the afternoon on the radio show and had mornings and knew I wasn't going to be talking about American soccer topics that are very important to me as much. I reached out and said, hey, does anybody want to do a morning show? Rob reached out. Rob said, yeah, I want to do a morning show with you. At the time, his job allowed him to do a morning show and also have, a 9 to 5, so to speak, that supported his family. Now that he doesn't have that 9 to 5, we're in that moment where I have the morning still, but I don't want to do it by myself. I don't think that's what the show should be. I don't like talking to myself if I can avoid it anymore. So at this point, we need to kind of level up. Now we've got some things, some oars in the water, some lines. We're trying to get some things started, but it is slow going, and we don't have this infrastructure behind us, right? I know there's some startup media companies in American soccer that are doing things, and more power to them. I'm glad that they're on the scene and making stuff happen. We're a 2-man shop, or we're with a 3-person shop with Jenny's involvement as a producer with us. That's it. That's our whole thing. We have to do everything ourselves. And with that in mind, if we can get to a place where not only can we inject money into the product so we can give you a better product and pay some people to do some stuff around the show and make it better, if we can get something towards Rob so that we can turn this into a full-blown American soccer media enterprise, because that is the goal, right? I would love to be able to quit my radio job and talk to you guys about American soccer every day of the week. So that is what we're working on here. So your support via Ultra membership or just subscribing and following and liking and telling people about us and hyping, apparently. If you hype our videos, that's a big deal. That's invaluable. Again, if you have $5 a month or whatever it is, go ahead, become an Ultra. That's great. But maybe more important is if you know somebody who might be interested in advertising and working and sponsoring and entitling.
Yeah, we do. We need an entitlement sponsor for sure.
Part of Morning Kickaround. If you know clubs and leagues and all kinds of things in that area too who might be interested, let us know. Again, we're trying to build out a network, but it's just slow going. So we need your help. Thank you very much.
Yeah, morningkickaround@gmail.com. If you've got any leads or contacts, send them that way. Great show today. Lots of fun. Thank you to Claire for joining us at the top of the show. Thank you for your great comments. As always, great to have Harry back as an MK Ultra. We'll have to get you into the Discord server. And everybody, have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday. And until then, enjoy your soccer.